So, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay, then. All right. So, last week, that we were talking about this experiencing the bodily activity. Thus, he trained himself. That aspect, calming the bodily activity. He breathed in, he breathed out. Thus, he trained himself. So, in that particular sentences, experience in the bodily activity and calming the bodily activity, those two aspects that I related to this in our everyday emotions and the things what we experience and how those things affect our body and retain a memory of it, and then how it started to bother us, and also how it disturbs us and how it prevents us being comfortable and peaceful in our everyday life, and how that kind of moods connected to our memory, and then again we body mind, how it get involved again. So that aspect was related to mostly that practice was to see what's happening in the body and be patient with the body, and seeing this energy aspect or the physiologic aspect of disturbances and being tolerant with it, being patient with it, rather than surrendering to it and going along with it. And then it is not only the body aspect, that mostly a lot of other things in the Buddhist teaching and the meditation goes into our nama aspect or the vibrational mental aspect. So this is another aspect that pretty much in the Buddhist teaching, that so in so many Buddhist discourses that Buddha tried to educate us, you see, and inform us and guide us, so that we can get some understanding and get a different approach to things than the way we do, you see. Long time ago, many years ago, that I told you a little story about Krishnamurti. He died in, I think, mid-80s. And he was, he's a well-known, very sincere, very educated and a philosopher, and who been talking about this spiritual stuff for a long time, you see. And one of his tape, maybe a couple of years before his death, he was interviewed by two professors, well-known two professors. One was professor of psychiatry and then the physics. And these professors were having a conversation with Krishnamurti about the mind, the consciousness, and all this heavy stuff, And then at the end of the conversation, the Krishnamurti was tired, exhausted, old man, and then he was just kind of dozing. And then one of the professors, just to close this session, said human beings are neuroses. When he said that, that all the discussion that they were discussing about the mind and the consciousness and all these things are coming into a conclusion, human beings are neurotic. With this, he tried to close the conversation, this interview, you see. And then Krishnamurti immediately opened his eyes, even though he was kind of tired, dozing. He immediately opened his eyes very widely and looked at the professor. And then the professor, in his appearance, it looked like he recognized, oh, this guy was not sleeping, he was paying very close attention. And then the Krishnamurti immediately looked at the professor and asked him, what did you say? And then the professor very quietly, politely, he said, I said the human beings are neurotic. Then the Krishnamurti asked, then what should we do about it? Then after a few minutes, a few seconds of silence, the professor again said that we have to get together and find a solution for this, Then the Krishnamurti said, no, 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 no. You are neurotic. I am neurotic. So two neurotic people getting together to find a solution to this doesn't work, And that was the end of the conversation. It didn't go further. The interview is over. So then in the Buddhist teaching, this is where really the Buddhist meditation begins, We human beings are neurotic. We all know to some extent. And why we are neurotic? We can say all kind of things. But a human being or sentient being, not just only a human being, sentient beings they all have this behavior of the neurotic personality or the behavior activities there, you see. The reason is for that, in the Buddhism, that we have a word, called satta. Satta basically means a living being, a sentient being, a person. These all meanings are included in this, what we call the satta, you see. In my translation of the Satipatthana, in the introduction, I briefly put that meaning, the satta, saying it's a body-mind process which constantly generates the ignorance and the attachment. That is the brief translation of the satta, a being, sentient being means. It's a body-mind process constantly generating it. And then you may you already know this word called bodhisattva. So then the bodhisattva, it's a term that we use, and then the bodhisattva is very famously translated as a compassionate being. A bodhisattva is a compassionate being. But when you look at the bodhisattva, these two words, the satta and the bodhi, there is no any word related to compassion. Bodhi basically means wisdom, wise, that is enlightened to some extent. Those are the words with the bodhi means. Bodhi means wisdom, wise, to some extent enlightened. It doesn't have compassion. But in generally, that a bodhisattva is introduced as a compassionate being, you see. And I am the only one, raising these kind of questions. Mostly everybody is very comfortable with the word translating bodhisattva as compassionate being. I live in the high desert and it gets hot here, so that my brain, my mind work in a different way, so that I ask different questions. So then the bodhisattva is a different person than a normal sattva. The normal sattva is a neurotic personality, all kind of things goes on. But the bodhisattva is a person, individual, who has some sort of a alertness, awakeness, and has some sort of a discipline into his own thoughts, and he conduct himself without getting into much troubles. He is on the right side of the path or the road rather than on the wrong side. So that is what the bodhisattva means. And then also, bodhi basically means the wise wisdom kind of a thing. When you are a wise person, when you have the wisdom, when you have this kind of a little discipline of your own thoughts, words, and deed, of course, you behave as a compassionate person, you see. You conduct yourself in the right way. It is not just for the profit, but that's what your journey is all about, you see. You are not doing these things in order to get somebody's attention or to get something out of somebody or to be famous or kind of a thing. He or she does behave without any particular agenda, that you are very comfortable to be kind and nice because you are run by or you are guided by your wisdom, your understanding, your intelligence. Therefore, you cannot do all crazy things, harmful things. You have some sort of a discipline, guidance. Under that, you conduct yourself without any particular agenda, in your everyday life. Then that is how you become a bodhisattva, you see. And when you become that kind of a being, then of course compassion is there, kindness is there. Then you are identified as a compassionate being, you see. The compassion thing comes later when you are first have to have the understanding and the wisdom to some extent so that you can be guided by the compassion. Otherwise, without the wisdom, of course, people are kind and nice and be compassionate here and there. There is no question about it. They are kind, they are nice, they are compassionate. But that compassion, that kindness never lasts very long when things are not going to your whatever the liking and your whatever the way. Even though you help somebody and after a while he doesn't remember that you help, and then you begin to complain, you feel bad, you feel used, you feel kind of I do the same stupid thing again and again, kind of you feel bad. But a bodhisattva is not a somebody who regrets or has guilty feeling about what he has done or didn't do kind of a thing. He doesn't have it. He doesn't go on that line. That's the difference. So then this satta, again, there is another beautiful explanation into this being. Satta basically means रूपे को यो चंदो यो रागो या नंदी या तन्हा तत्त सत्तो तत्त विसत्तो tasma sattoti uchati. That means as a sentient being, living beings, that we generate or we have this so-called desire, a particular desire basically here means a particular way we prepare, we select or we elect, we choose, oh, my body, something especially we select or we choose, and then with that is what here the desire basically means, a selecting, choosing, and then that is what we call the desire here, and based on that the system generate the attachment to that choice, and when the system generate the attachment to that choice, the system in the system, in this program, in this body-mind program, it has a desire to experience it again the same way, you see. It is called in the Pali delight, Delight here basically means I'm so excited, or I'm really happy to experience it again in the same way, you see. This is a mental process, you see. And then once that process is generated, that is what lead to the craving, you see. So then these four aspects, desire, attachment, delight, and craving to our body, to our physical body, whatever we experience in the physical body, that we are stuck, we are deeply or tightly stuck in it. Therefore, we are called a satta, or being. Any living being, doesn't regardless their shape and form. This is the process, this is the programs, it goes in the body, you see. Not only to the body, you see, it comes Vedana yo chando yo rago ya nandi ya tanha tatta satto tatta visatto tasma satto ti uchyate. The same four aspects, the desire, attachment, delight, and craving, exactly goes towards this, whatever the sensation or the feelings that we experience. There we are stuck, deeply stuck. Therefore, we are called beings. Then again, it goes in the same way, those four aspects, in relation to our perceptions and the conceptions. Exactly, we are deeply stuck. We are deeply stuck, tightly stuck in that processes. And then it goes into what we call the sanskara, volitional formation, sometimes translated as mental formations or idiosyncrasies. Here also exactly the same way, those four aspects goes, you see. Desire, attachment, delight, and the craving. There we are stuck, deeply stuck, you see. And the most interesting thing in this process is it mentioned vinyane yo rago, o yo chando, yo rago, ya nandi, ya tanha, tatta satto, tatta visatto, tasma satto ti uchyati. That means consciousness itself. This is little different than what you read in psychological books or whatever. Because the vijnana, this consciousness itself, in the Buddhist way of studying this Buddhist psychology, has this desire, attachment, delight, and the craving into the very process of the consciousness itself. So then the body, feeling, perception, mental formations, and the consciousness, these so-called five aggregates, five things, that we are deeply stuck in this process. Therefore, we are called a satta, you see. So then when we have this kind of a background, when we are functioning based on these five aggregates, which have desire, attachment, delight, and craving, when we are deeply stuck or tightly stuck, then there is nothing to be expected but a neurotic personality. This is what we all basically doing, you see. It is sometimes, so interesting to see, what this technology, this YouTubes and all these, whatever videos, sometimes showing. They are sometimes showing animals' behaviors, you see, and really enlightening us to see we have the same behaviors, and they too have their behaviors, and we have that too, you see. I saw a little YouTube video about two fish deep in the ocean, and where these two fish live in a little house, little cave close to each other, you see. And then the one fish comes out and look around. Nobody is around, everything is quiet. He goes in and he bring his trash and put by the door of the other fish, and then go in and stay quiet. And then a few seconds later, the other fish come around, see that some dirt is, something is put right by his door, He look at it, and it is really funny because it wasn't there before, now it is there. Then he take that and put by the door of the other one, you see. It's just like two neighbors, pushing trash over the fence to the others, and this kind of thing, you see. So this is all sentient behavior, you see. It's so interesting to very closely watch. They are to some extent a neurotic too, you see. So we are the same, you see. Doesn't matter what neighborhood, the zip code, what kind of, furniture, nice, expensive one we are sitting in, we got this behavior going on, very similar behaviors. So then, when the Krishnamurti said, we are neurotic, so what we supposed to do? We all have to get together and find the solution. Then the Krishnamurti says, no, that doesn't work. Then what are we supposed to do? This is what, in the Buddhism, the beautiful aspect of is, When we sit down to meditate and close our eyes, the reason why we close our eyes and when we sit down, it is not to find out how crazy my neighbor is, or how crazy the world is, or therefore I don't want anything to do with the world and everything, and I'm just withdrawing, find a little peace. That might be somebody's probably the intention. I just want to find peace. But before you find peace, you're supposed to find out first how crazy you are, you see. How neurotic you are. That's the last thing that we want to know, We want to call everybody is crazy, everybody is a problem, and finger point at everybody and say they are the problem, you see. I'm the nice one kind of a thing. But here in the meditation, you close your eyes, you sit down, and then you try to see how crazy you are, you see. How crazy your own mind is, What make your mind crazy is not anything else but your own desire, your own attachment, delight, the craving. These are basic, but there are many other aspects coming along based on these basic things, More are perpetuated, generated, you see. Therefore, these things are, first we have to get a good look at, what I have, based on what I behave, based on what I feel this way. This has to be very clearly checked out. This is supposed to be very clearly understood, If I am going to tell you, you are crazy, you this, you, then that is the end of you coming to my class, You never recommend anybody to listen to me too, So I'm not going to do that. So each one of us, when we meditate, first thing what we have to understand and pay attention to know is what make us crazy, what make me sad, what make me lonely, what make me frustrated, what make me anxious. You got to zoom in rather than zooming out, rather than you go with the flow and going out, you got to turn it in, and you got to get closer to you to have a good look at it, not just in a rush. You got to keep looking at it again and again and again and again, so that all these prejudices, whatever quick thoughts, whatever, you can get rid of, and you can get after little practice to see this. In the Buddha's teaching, you see, there are two words which comes alone in the Buddhist teaching, you see. It is called putujjana, one word. Putujjana basically means, it is translated as ordinary, not educated, not trained into this, whatever the Buddhist, this kind of a teaching, not disciplined in this kind of ideas. A personality is what called the putujjana. Putujjana, this word basically means who has a mind which always create all kind of things, greed, hatred, delusion, this and that. Constantly it arises, perpetuate, it springs in his mind very easily. That is the person we call the putujjana, or the ordinary person. This person is what that neurotic personality is. That personality is what the neurotic personality is, you see. A putujjana, ordinary, that's all, who are not trained into this practice, who are not educated into these ideas, who are not disciplined in this way, is the neurotic personality. So then when we have that personality, that mind, that character, Buddha says he's not going to understand this. And he can never be a bodhisattva too, A prutakjana personality has to change in order to be a bodhisattva too, you see. So the other personality called Sutava Arya Savako, Arya Dhamme, Kovido, Arya Dhamme, Suvinito, Sapurisanam Dhammanam, Kovido. What that those phrases basically mean is, the other person is, it's called a noble disciple, a noble person. That means who are taught this way, who are guided to these ideas, who are trained into these things. He's disciplined with this kind of ideas, opinions, thoughts, which are healthy. He practicing it, he developing it. And once he developed it, once he practiced it, and then he become a noble person, noble disciple kind of a term. And then with that, he begin to digest this, whatever the teachings, and his personality is going to change. He's not going to have this neurotic personality, you see. And when that neurotic personality is not there, and that is the moment that you are capable of understanding and seeing things as it is, you see. That is the moment you're going to look at these things. So then the noble disciple, whenever we look at or hear this, whatever the noble truth of Buddhist teachings, it says birth is suffering, sickness is suffering, old age, death, separation from loved ones associated with the unpleasant, and not to get one wishes. And then in brief, these 5 aggregates of clingings are suffering. Whenever we hear that, after hearing this so many times, we just get kind of numb to it. Plus, we just immediately think, oh, why we talk about so much negative things? This is negative Sunday morning. We don't want to hear that. We want some beautiful things, good things, positive thing kind. This repetition of this, whatever the noble truth that we have given so much in the Buddhist teaching is, it's not just to leave a bad taste in your mouth, or give you some sort of a negativity, you see. That's not what it is. It is a training to be done so many ways to look at. If we don't get it when we were young, when we middle age, we all going to get it after that, you see. We know that there is no way we're going to get out of this. We all are subject to these things. This is just like a fire right behind me that I can't run away chasing me, coming along with the life. Everybody knows it, whether they believe it or not, whether they have a religion or not, whether they are interested in the spirituality or not, whether they meditate or not. We all know it, but we are little reluctant to do that and understand and follow it, because still there is a little energy and a strength in our system. Therefore, we think, it is better to change the government and put our party into power. You see, we get busy with that. We will deal with this later. Yeah, we can change the government, put a different party we like in the power. They will talk about big stuff, but our problem is not going to be solved by anybody. You see. Our misery, our sadness, our loneliness, our anxiety, our whatever the mental, physical, whatever the issues we go through, nobody come to solve it. That I have to look at it in a realistic way and try to deal with it rather than try to postpone it. And then whenever we talk about this, whatever the noble truth of suffering, it is not the purpose of giving the negativity. Neither it has some sort of way of reinforcing some positivity either, you see. It is basically telling us, look, see, and verify these things. What are these things are? When we're young and strong and healthy and restless, we don't want to verify anything. But, now because we were busy doing things, a lot of energy to do all kind of things, now, we just have a lot of time, but no much energy to do, so that we are simply sitting on the couch or lying down on the bed. And so when we really look at it, it is hard for us to look at it realistically, because our mind has gone on the other way so strongly. So we try to be a little positive. Still, there are good days and there is things enjoyable kind of a thing. We never recommend the negativity. We to some extent encourage people to be positive, to some extent, in a realistic way, to be a little positive, you see. But we also never always going to make you positive, or you're not going to die, you're not going to get old, I'm not going to get sick, and that kind of way. We never positively give that approach. We are teaching for you to avoid the negativity. To some extent, being positive is okay, but don't be too positive. Don't delude yourself, but try to see and look at things as it is. Look at things realistically. So the teaching people to be realistic is the most difficult thing, you see. It's very, very difficult to teach people to be realistic. It is like you are trying to show a cat a direction, you see, with your finger or with your anything, when you try to move it and try to show a direction to the cat never going to get it, because he's get stuck with this, whatever the movement. He move with the move, his eyes goes on, he is not going to get the direction, you see. So like that, trying to teach people to be realistic is very, very difficult. All what we can do is teach them to look at themselves, not to be so negative, or whatever the negativity, whatever you have built up, and push it aside, brush it off. Don't be overconfident and don't be over positive and go like that. Avoid that. And then try to be realistic. These meditation methods are the methods to be realistic, you see. It will guide you to see what it is, who you are, what you have in a realistic way when you use these methods. So that is what we're supposed to do, you see. To first understand and close our eyes and get a good look at how our feelings, how our thoughts, how our perceptions contaminated with desire, attachment, delight, and craving, how it is going to have its own agenda and keep me pushing in a whatever direction. Rather than following it, just try to see how much anger is involved here, how much attachment is involved here. Try to look at that and see when it take over how neurotic we become, you see. Try to see how much it influences my own personality, how I feel, what I'm going to do, kind of thing. And that is what meditation is. For that, you have to have the awareness, you have to have the mindfulness, and then properly observe it. The rest continues on next Sunday. Let's meditate.